If you are somebody who feels always wired, always anxious or stressed, and then also chronically depleted, fatigued, exhausted, this may just be the video that helps explain why, so stick around. Hey there, it's Dr. Ashley. Today we are going to be talking all about cortisol. Cortisol is that stress hormone that helps as part of the fight or flight response in your body. And we're really going to be delving into the beneficial effects of cortisol when it's appropriately produced in your body, as well as some of the detrimental effects, including the symptoms and some of the other side effects that can occur when it is being produced inappropriately in your body. So why is cortisol so important? We're going to go through the role of cortisol in your body and then delineate the positives and negative effects of it. But first, you need to understand how it's produced, and that comes back to the hypothalamus. You're probably sick of hearing me talk about the hypothalamus, but it really is so important. So remember, the hypothalamus is that part of your brain that is the master regulator. It is responsible for homeostasis or maintaining balance in your body. So the hypothalamus will send signals to your pituitary gland, which further sends signals to your adrenal gland to produce cortisol, among several other hormones that your adrenal glands produce. So when we talk about cortisol, frequently we will talk about the HPA axis, which is the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, because it's usually not just aberrant cortisol that is the problem. It is dysfunction within that entire mechanism, that entire axis that causes problems. So cortisol really plays a role in our stress response. So the stress response is triggered when your hypothalamus interprets stress, either from your internal or your external environment, which sends its signals to the pituitary gland, which sends further signals down the line. When you have stress, there is a lightning fast pathway and then a slower, longer duration pathway. So let's go through the quick pathway first. That pathway is run through your nervous system. So nerves can conduct messages very, very quickly in the order of seconds. So when you experience stress, your sympathetic nervous system and your adrenal gland, the specific piece of it called the adrenal medulla, produce hormones, specifically epinephrine and norepinephrine. These are responsible for several effects in your body, including increasing your heart rate, increasing your blood pressure, and increasing mental alertness or mental clarity. And if you think about it, if you're undergoing a big stressor like being attacked by a bear, those are all good things that you want. You want blood to be pumping throughout your body, especially to your muscles, so you can get ready to run or to fight. And you want to be focused and clearly thinking about next steps or what you can do to get yourself out of the situation. On the other side of the stress response is the hormonally mediated. So it's not as fast as the order of seconds that you can see on the nervous side response, but we're talking in the order of minutes on the hormonal side. And this is where the HPA axis comes in. So the adrenal cortex, which is different than the adrenal medulla, will actually receive signals from the pituitary gland that tells it to produce more cortisol or to produce a surge of cortisol in your body. Cortisol, when it's released like this, does several things. It mobilizes lots of energy stores so that your body has plenty of fuel to do the things it needs to. So it'll mobilize your fat, it'll mobilize sugar that's been stored on your body, and it'll mobilize available amino acids or protein building blocks. It will also have effects on your circadian rhythm pathways. And if you think about it, if it's nearing evening, but your village is being attacked by another village, so you're undergoing that stress, you don't want to be falling asleep. You want to interrupt that circadian rhythm there. It also has effects on your immune system. So it's preparing your body for any possible damage. So if you were to get cut or hurt in the attack, it's getting your immune system prepped for that. So if you think about it, This stress response and cortisol production in our body played a very important role as we were evolving, because we were in a state where there was frequent threats to our system. And I think it's helpful to look at it as still playing a positive role. Even though our threats are different, so we're not worried about bears necessarily attacking us for the most part in our day-to-day lives, we still have a certain level of stress that we need to mount a response to. And those are going to be things like giving performances or giving presentations at work or at school. There are going to be exercise or sports where you still want to have that same level of physical activation so that you can show up and perform to your best ability. And our stress today comes in a lot of different forms. That comes in, we already talked about work. We also have stress in our relationships, in our parenting, in our romantic relationships, and our social circles. We have financial stress. There's so many stressors that we do want to respond to in the same way that we would have been responding to in the same form as we were evolving of physical stressors. We want that mental clarity. We want that surge of hormones to kind of wake us up and keep us going. So that is how cortisol plays a very positive role in our body. So let's talk about how cortisol can play a negative role in our body. And you may have heard the term adrenal fatigue before. That's kind of going out of style, again, because it is pointing to your adrenal gland as being the problem. And the more favorable term these days is stress-induced HPA axis dysfunction, because that more clearly says what's going on. There is some sort of stress, whether that's mental or physical, on your body that is wearing on that function in your body, all the way from the pituitary, the hypothalamus, and your adrenal gland. So it's not just your adrenal gland and the cortisol that's the issue. It's just those are symptoms of the overlying issue. So one important thing that I have mentioned about hormones before is that they work on a negative feedback loop. So what that means is that when cortisol is produced in your adrenal gland, it sends signals back to the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland to shut off those earlier signals saying produce more cortisol. That way, once your body has a surge of cortisol, it goes back in a negative feedback loop to stop that production of cortisol over long periods. You just want a burst of cortisol to get all of those things done until the threat goes away. With prolonged perceived stress, that negative feedback loop breaks down. So essentially, the brakes on this system start to break down. Perceived stress can be further defined as events in your life that are perceived or thought to be both harmful to you as well as uncontrollable by you. And harmful can mean physical harm, aka a bear attacking you, as well as harm to your ego. So this persona that you take on and present to the world, if it thinks that it's being threatened, that is stressful to your system. And then with uncontrollable, what we mean by that is either new, so a new situation, you're starting a new day at work or starting a new school, or you're taking on a new role, something like that, becoming a parent for the first time. So something that's novel or new, and then also something that you feel like you don't have control over. So prolonged periods of that perceived harmful and uncontrollable event will break down your cortisol's negative feedback or brake system. So there are a lot of negative effects that can happen when this brake system breaks down. Cortisol, there is a spike first thing in the morning. And again, we want that. We want that surge of energy and body and brain activation to get up and go and start taking care of our day. And then we want it to slowly taper and reach its nadir or lowest point around bedtime and overnight, so that our activation is turned off so that we can sleep well. And that really leads to so much dysfunction. So some of the things that you're going to get are mood issues: irritability, anger, depression, anxiety. You're going to have decreased memory, and you're also going to have brain fog. You're going to have that decreased responsiveness, decreased alertness if that system breaks down. You're also going to get sleep disruption. Again, cortisol, one of cortisol's role is to affect the circadian rhythm. So if you have chronically abnormal, whether high or low levels of cortisol in your system, that will negatively affect your body's ability to stay on that 24-hour cycle. It can also lead to thyroid dysfunction, reproductive cycle dysfunction. It also leads to glycemic dysregulation. So remember, one of the roles of cortisol was to mobilize sugar. It wants sugar to be available for your muscles, for your immune system, all of those things. And that can result in obesity, and especially what we call central adiposity, so holding excess weight around your midsection. And that can also contribute to insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes. It can also increase inflammation significantly, and that is associated with a slew of conditions, including cardiovascular disease, autoimmune disease, like we said, obesity, metabolic dysfunction, and type 2 diabetes. Those are all associated with increased inflammation. And because of that, the effects of the cortisol on your immune system, you can really have immune system issues. Not only too much activation in the case of autoimmune disease, but too little in the case of recurrent chronic infections that can stem from this abnormal cortisol regulation. One important thing that I did want to note here is that all of these things are interrelated. And what I mean by that is that, yes, having abnormal HPA axis function can cause issues like sleep issues, thyroid issues, diabetes, and insulin resistance, but also vice versa. So having thyroid disease can set you up for HPA axis dysfunction. Having insulin resistance can predispose you to really easily getting HPA axis dysfunction when something else is off, like surgery or chronic stress or something like that. And this is actually really good news, because what that means is that you have multiple access points to be able to affect this process in your body. So controlling stress, especially if it's physical stress, so say you're undergoing a major surgery, or you had a big injury that you're recovering from, there's really not a ton that you can do to stop that at the time. You can just support yourself while you recover, but you can intervene in all of these other areas. So that's beautiful, and it gives you so many options for starting to address these issues. But let's just briefly go over my top solutions for you. The first one, which is likely the most difficult, is address stress. And there's many ways that you can do that. There's mind-body techniques like meditation, journaling, biofeedback, therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, things like that. And there's also this idea of managing your mind or doing thought work. So going back to the root cause of what is causing this perceived stress. Again, perceived stress is something that is threatening to you physically, or threatening to your ego, or perceived as uncontrollable. So it's uncontrollable, it's a new situation. Can you think about whatever is causing you stress, whether it be work or family or relationships or yada, yada, yada? Can you think about it differently in a way that produces less of a stress response in your body? The next one is to address all of those other factors that I just mentioned. Is your sleep on point? Are you making sure that your diet and daily routines are decreasing inflammation and combating any possible insulin resistance? All of those things will help your body tolerate any imbalance and prolonged stress response better, so that the HPA axis can get back to normal function as soon as possible. So if you are somebody who is struggling with chronic stress and worried that you have some stress-induced HPA axis dysfunction, make sure to go over to my website and download my free guide, which is 5 ways to reduce or lower cortisol in minutes. So these are techniques that you can take with you anywhere. You don't need any special equipment. You can just do them on your own anytime you're feeling overly stressed to automatically lower your cortisol levels and get the benefits from that lower cortisol. Also, make sure to check out the other offerings that I have. So if you're struggling with sleep, check out the Sleep Solution. If you're struggling with insulin resistance, check out the weight loss series. Just head on over to selfhealingdrashley.com to check all of this out. Until next time, we'll see you.